The story begins with Alec Ygret calmly fishing at a lake, until a mage named Eldaz approaches and asks if he would be interested in learning magic. Soon after, the scene changes, and we see Eldaz teaching Alec how to control magical power. To encourage him, the mage mentions that, in the future, he will make friends and might need magic to protect them. Alec surprises his teacher by learning quickly. But even so, he feels frustrated for taking an entire day to master only one spell. Eldaz then explains that an ordinary person would take almost a month to learn the same. Excited, Alec asks to learn another spell, but Eldaz replies that that's enough for today. The boy feels disappointed by the decision, and the mage invites him to fish until sunset. Alec still wants to keep training, but Eldaz tells him that he has a natural talent for magic, and that, even without his lessons, he would one day become a great mage. He also says that the rest should be left to destiny. Alec is startled by those words and asks why Eldaz decided to teach him. Before he can answer, the fishing rod moves, and the mage panics, not knowing what to do, since he had never fished before. Alec can't hold back his laughter and helps him, commenting that such a skilled mage should know how to fish. Their lives continue peacefully, and time passes as Eldaz teaches more and more about magic to his apprentice. The seasons change, and one day, suddenly, the mage announces that he is leaving the capital. Alec is devastated to hear that, realizing he may never see him again. Before departing, Eldaz gives one final piece of advice. If Alec ever has the chance to become a court mage, he must refuse the position. The young man doesn't understand why and asks why his master taught him magic. As he walks away, Eldaz reveals that he owed that favor to Alec's late mother. The story then moves forward, showing Alec as a student at a magic academy. There, he discovers that Eldaz had been the best in his class and became a court mage right after graduation. However, he also learns that Eldaz was later banished, and finally understands the reason behind the advice he was given. Even so, Alec decides to follow a different path. He wants to become a court mage to change the system and somehow repay what Eldaz did for him. As the years pass, Alec achieves that goal and earns the title of court mage. However, suddenly, the Crown Prince Regulus expels him from the exploration group right in the middle of a dungeon. Alec, confused, asks the reason, and the prince coldly replies that he's being dismissed for being useless. Regulus explains that he always risks his own life on the front lines to defeat monsters, while Lenny, the fire mage, casts powerful spells to keep enemies away, and Ickis acts as the group's shield, blocking attacks. Alec, on the other hand, according to the prince, just stays in the rear, casting support spells, without the courage to fight for real. He says he doesn't need someone so weak by his side, and even humiliates Alec by saying he doesn't deserve to be called a court mage. Alec tries to justify why he only uses support magic, but Regulus isn't interested in listening. Lenny supports the prince, calling Alec a coward and saying that he always holds the group back out of fear of going deeper into the dungeon. She admits that she only tolerated him until now because the king had ordered them to be on the same team. Now that the prince has decided to expel him, she sees no reason to be polite anymore and says she couldn't stand having someone so useless beside her. Regulus continues, saying that Alec only got good grades at the Magic Institute thanks to others' help, and that's why he was appointed as a court mage. Alec tries once again to explain his reason for using support magic, but the prince interrupts him and asks why he carries a short sword, reminding him that commoners aren't allowed to bear weapons. Alec explains that the sword would be necessary on the next floor of the dungeon, but Regulus becomes furious. He snatches the sword from the boy's hands, grabs him by the collar, and says that no one in his group disobeys his orders. Then he rips the court mage's cape from Alec's shoulders, saying that he doesn't deserve it. Unable to react, Alec leaves the dungeon completely shaken. Even after being humiliated and dismissed, he still wants to help the prince and the group. So, he writes down some notes with information about the dungeon's deeper levels, trying to offer a way to help them. Since Regulus doesn't have enough magical power to handle the dangers alone, Alec always believed that, despite everything, they could become trusted allies. The next day, he goes to the palace to try to deliver the notes to the king, but the guards stop him from entering. They say he has been officially removed from his position as a court mage. Now, Alec is just a commoner, and ordinary people aren't allowed to enter without permission. Shocked, Alec tries to argue, but Lenny appears and tells him to leave, saying that he's now just a commoner like any other. As she turns to return to the palace, Alec asks her at least to deliver the notes to the king, reminding her that it was the king himself who appointed him as a court mage and assigned him to the prince's group. Lenny takes the notes and, coldly, tears each page apart and steps on them. Then she orders the guards to remove Alec from the area, leaving him alone, hopeless, and unemployed in the middle of the city. He feels defeated and murmurs an apology to Eldas, regretting not being able to bring change to the court. At that moment, a familiar voice calls his name. Alec turns and sees a red-haired young woman looking at him. She runs up to him and wraps him in a warm hug. Alec immediately recognizes her. It's Yorha. They sit by a river to talk, and Alec tells her everything that happened, how he was expelled from the prince's group and lost his title as a court mage. Yorha shows intense anger toward the Galdana kingdom for maintaining such a rigid division between nobles and commoners. Alec manages, with some difficulty, to calm her down before anyone overhears them. Then Yorha comments that, in fact, being dismissed was a good opportunity, as it fits perfectly with the plans she had in mind. She asks if Alec remembers the promise she made 4 years ago that one day she would bring him into her group. Alec remembers, and Yorha reveals that she came to the capital for that very reason. She stands up, extends her hand, and asks Alec to join her dungeon exploration group. Alec feels a wave of happiness but hesitates, remembering how useless he feels after losing his title as a court mage. Yorha completely ignores those concerns. To her, the one who truly belongs in her group is Alec, and everyone on her team had already agreed that someday they would go looking for him. Alec feels deeply moved by her words and immediately accepts the offer. Yorha warmly welcomes him into the rank, a group called Lasting Period. The next day, Alec departs with Yorha, carrying with him the memory of Eldas's advice about not becoming a court mage. A few days later, the news of Alec's departure reaches Regulus and his group. They show no interest whatsoever. Regulus comments on how Alec was once considered a genius among the academy's students and how great expectations were placed on him. To the prince, Alec was simply a waste of time. Lenny, meanwhile, remarks that they no longer have to worry, since soon a pure-blood noble, the son of Duke Fornius, will join their group, making them even stronger. She predicts that, before long, they will be clearing dungeons at an impressive pace, and the prince's name will be remembered for those achievements. Meanwhile, Alec and Yorha arrive at Fiesel. Known as the City of Dungeons, Yorha explains that the city is a place where there is no prejudice among adventurers. She and her friends had established their guild's base there, and the dungeon they aim to conquer lies within the ruins to the west of the city. Yorha is eager to register Alec as an adventurer, but when they reach the guild, they receive unpleasant news. The receptionist informs them that Alec cannot join the group because they explore beyond the 30th floor, and for that, a special license is required, one that is only granted to members who have been with the guild for at least 2 years. Yorha becomes furious and tries to convince the receptionist to make an exception, but she fails. Yorha mentions that Kraja was supposed to speak with the guild about this matter, and the receptionist confirms that Kraja had indeed come and even threatened them to allow Alec to join the group, leaving both Alec and Yorha embarrassed. Later, Alec and Yorha sit on a bench, and the young woman looks frustrated for having depended on Kraja's help. While they eat lunch, she comments that their group has already reached the 52nd floor of the dungeon and that they can't afford to wait 2 years for Alec to join officially. Even so, Yorha remains hopeful and decides that if they can't access the higher floors, they'll train Alec on the lower levels instead. Alec agrees with the idea, and they immediately head to a lower-level dungeon infested with insect-type monsters. Yorha uses her reinforcement magic to increase Alec's speed, and he moves around her, defeating the monsters with agility. However, something feels off when the number of insects doesn't decrease. Alec realizes that the problem must be their nest. Something is forcing the monsters to keep attacking. Yorha comments that she didn't expect to face such resistance this early on the 2nd floor. During the battle, she activates her shield and charges toward the monsters. Alec asks her not to do that, insisting that it's better to defeat them one by one. Confident in her defensive magic, Yorha ignores his warning. She remarks that Alec seems rusty, as those monsters shouldn't pose any real challenge. Watching her effort, Alec remembers that he's no longer a court mage, he's just an adventurer again, like in the old days. At that moment, he recalls Eldaz's teachings, to use magic to protect friends in danger. Motivated by that memory, Alec launches into the attack. He swiftly eliminates several monsters with fireballs and defeats the remaining ones using his wand as a physical weapon. A massive swarm of insects surrounds them, but Yorha remains unfazed. She creates a barrier around them both, giving Alec time to cast a powerful lightning spell that instantly annihilates all the insects. With the danger over, Alec breathes a sigh of relief, and Yorha pats his back, praising his performance. However, the ground shakes violently, and a gigantic mudworm emerges, nearly swallowing Yorha. Alec promises to protect her and asks if her defensive magic really was the best at the academy. She confirms, explaining that while she specializes in support, Alec is the best attack mage. Trusting her completely, Alec casts a spell called Sacrifice. A flaming serpent emerges, wrapping around the worm and turning it to ashes. While Yorha remains unharmed, she approaches Alec and comments that, as she suspected, he truly is the best attack mage. The battle brings back memories from their academy days, when they once fought a 5-headed dragon together. Alec's attacks back then were so powerful that he completely destroyed the creature. Thanks to their combined strength, they managed to clear the 68th floor of the dungeon, setting a new record at the academy. Everyone at the academy was talking about how, on graduation day, one group was missing. They had gone to the capital to try to break the dungeon record and still hadn't returned. When Professor Rosa saw them coming back, she let out a sigh of relief. The other students couldn't believe it when they found out that the group had not only surpassed the record on the 37th floor, but had also reached the 68th, defeating even the feared Hydra, the boss of that level. During the ceremony, Rosa handed out the diplomas to the graduates. Ornist ranked 4th among the top students, Kraja 3rd, Yorha 2nd, and 1st place went to Alec. Later, while walking through a park, Alec mentioned that he intended to become a court mage. His father didn't agree with that choice, but Alec wanted to give him a better life. After all, his father had raised him alone since his mother's death. Kraja pointed out that court mages earned a good salary, and Alec, in his thoughts, remembered the promise he had made to Eldaz to change the royal court system. Even so, he confessed that he wanted to become an adventurer and travel with his friends. But he knew being an adventurer was the opposite of having stability. Ornist stated that if Alec joined them, they would become the most powerful group since the founding of the Magic Institute, with 4 prodigies together. Yorha added that from that day on, they would give their all and, once they became famous adventurers, they would come back for him. She asked that if he ever faced any hardship, he should rely on them without hesitation. Back in the present, Yorha took Alec to a tavern to celebrate his arrival. However, after just one drink, she got completely drunk, grumbling about how he had almost roasted her with a fire spell. In the middle of the confusion, she collapsed onto her chair and fell asleep right there. Alec then covered his friend with his cloak so she wouldn't get cold. Suddenly, a man approached, saying Alec would never make it as an adventurer in Fiesel if he kept being that gentle. Alec ignored him, but the man tried to smash a bottle on his head. Alec easily defended himself. The man then revealed that he knew who Alec was and placed an adventurer's license on the table, apologizing for his rudeness. He said Alec could have it if he showed him his magic. At that moment, Yorha woke up and recognized the man. He was the guild master. Alec was shocked. The master led him to the underground arena and explained that the test was simple. All he had to do was make him acknowledge his magic. Yorha disagreed, reminding him that they had just fought monsters, but Alec said it was fine. He still had enough energy and knew that this was the chance he needed to enter the dungeons alongside the group. Seeing his determination, Yorha eventually agreed. The man introduced himself as Levier Stance, the guild master of Fiesel. Alec recognized him immediately. He was a former S-rank adventurer, famous for his strength and leadership. The duel began with Alec launching an electric attack, which Levier easily dodged. The master counterattacked with a splash spell, but Alec evaded it and realized that long-range attacks wouldn't work. Trying to get closer, Alec saw Levier activate his physical enhancement magic, which greatly increased his speed. In a swift movement, the master struck. Alec managed to block, but was thrown against the wall. Getting back on his feet, he began thinking about how to counter such strength. Then a smile appeared on his face. He remembered that he was no longer a court mage and no longer had to hold back. Transforming his wand into an energy sword, he charged forward with everything he had. Levier advanced as well, but was caught off guard by an electric discharge. Alec took advantage of the moment when his opponent was paralyzed to strike with his sword. The combo was perfect, yet still not enough to bring down the master. Excited, Levier activated his magic gauntlets, called Dragoneel. The battle intensified, and even with all of Alec's efforts, his blows had no effect. Worse still, the gauntlet's special ability slowly regenerated Levier's body. Alec tried everything to win, but nothing worked. In a brief lapse of his opponent's guard, he landed a direct hit to the abdomen. But even that wasn't enough. Exhausted and with his mana at its limit, he kept fighting until the very end before finally collapsing during his last attempt. Yorha rushed to help him. When Levier was about to say whether Alec had passed or not, Ornest appeared, commenting that it was impressive to see Alec push a former S-rank adventurer that far. After the duel, Levier acknowledged Alec's strength and talent, declaring that he deserved the adventurer's license. Later, in the guild hall, Ornest asked if Alec had faced many hardships while working at the court. Yorha replied that he had, but that it was a long story. At that moment, Misha rushed in, saying there was an emergency and calling for the guild master. Levier stood up and said he would handle it, asking only that no one touch the shelf of drinks while he was gone. Ornest went straight to the shelf and asked Yorha to tell him everything that had happened with Alec. As he listened, his expression turned to outrage. He was shocked to learn that Alec had worked as a sort of babysitter for the prince, forbidden to wield a sword, forced to carry equipment, organize items, and even prohibited from using flashy spells. Yorha agreed with his anger, saying she had also been furious when she found out, especially since the prince had the audacity to call Alec's support magic useless. Ornest was shocked, remembering that Alec hadn't even used support magic before. Yorha confirmed it, explaining that he had learned everything from scratch and that his defensive magic had become extremely powerful. Hearing that made Ornest even angrier. Alec, who had mastered several types of magic, had to learn an entirely new style just to please the spoiled Prince of Galdana, and even then, he was insulted and expelled under the excuse that he was no longer needed in the group. His rage was so great that he ended up crushing the bottle in his hand, breaking it without realizing it. At that moment, Alec woke up. Yorha, smiling with relief, told him that he had passed Levier's test and earned his adventurer's license. Alec was pleased now he could explore the dungeons together with his old group. However, Ornest interrupted, saying that would have to wait because there was something more important to do: get revenge on the Prince of Galdana's group. Alec asked him to calm down, saying it wasn't worth worrying so much about it. Ornest, still fuming, said that he had to fight back, that it was what common sense demanded. Alec replied that it might be his common sense, but not society's. Yorha reminded them that fights between groups were forbidden precisely because of that kind of thinking. Ornest then asked if she really accepted letting it go after seeing a comrade treated that way. Yorha was left speechless, but before she could respond, Alec stepped in, asking Ornest not to put their leader in trouble. He said he planned to make the most of his new life as an adventurer, and that alone would be enough payback for the prince. Ornest interpreted those words in his own way. He said that all they had to do was become the most powerful group in the world that way. The court would regret dismissing such a talented mage, and if the kingdom ever faced a crisis and came begging for help, they would simply say no. Alec thought the idea of becoming the strongest in the world was far more exciting than going back to serving as the prince's escort. Meanwhile, Levier was discussing a serious problem. He mentioned that when complications involve an S-rank group, the situation becomes a huge challenge for the entire guild. Then he asked Krista what had happened to her group. called Rechroma. The girl replied that they needed help urgently. Levier immediately issued an emergency call, announcing that Krista would need to form a team to rescue her comrades. The location was the 64th floor of the dungeon, known as the Tank Killer floor. Shortly after, Krasha went looking for Alec. She mentioned that a meeting was taking place and wanted to know why he hadn't shown up. Alec explained that only rank adventurers from Fiesel had been summoned, and he was practically an outsider in the city. Krasha then used a healing spell to treat his wounds and said she didn't care what he had done, she wouldn't meddle, but she was willing to listen if he wanted to talk. Even so, Alec still had trouble relaxing. His time in the court had left him with the habit of always keeping his guard up around people, even knowing that the local adventurers were very different from Galdana's arrogant nobles. Krasha realized how hard those 4 years had been for him. With a gentle look, she approached and placed her hand on his head in a silent gesture of affection. Then Ornest came rushing in, announcing that they had received a rescue mission directly from the guild master. Yorha explained the details. The mission would take place in a dungeon where healing magic was blocked, only potions worked. Alec was surprised to hear that Krasha had agreed to participate in something so dangerous. She replied that, in fact, she had been against it, and that the absurd idea of challenging that dungeon had come from Ornest. Yorha mentioned that, given the characteristics of the floor's boss, it was certain they would have to rely on Alec's power. That's why the final decision about accepting the mission was up to him. Alec, even feeling a bit rusty, said he would accept. Ornest told them to leave as soon as possible, before Levier and the others went ahead without them. 2 groups would take part in the mission, one led by the guild master himself, and the other formed by their team. Krasha pointed out that, in practice, they had only been included as support. Alec believed that the real extra there was him, feeling like he didn't even deserve to be part of the team. But Ornest disagreed, saying that no one but Alec had the right to join their group after all. The most powerful group needed the most powerful mage. Yorha added that the guild master had only authorized their participation because Alec was with them. If it were just the 3 of them, Levier would never have allowed it. And with that, the group lasting period was complete once again. Standing before the entrance of the dungeon, they commented that the challenge they had faced in the capital during their academy days was nothing more than the prologue to the true legend they were about to write together. With confidence in their eyes, they declared that the world would soon know the group known as Lasting Period. And that's how we end the 2nd episode of the anime. The banished court magician aims to become the strongest. If you want to see the continuation of the next episodes, leave it down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming videos. See you next time.